This podcast is sponsored by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. Free free. There's also creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. I actually use Anchor for this podcast, and it has saved me a lot of time and energy because everything is consolidated in one place. It just makes it so much easier. So if you're interested in doing the same thing, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Once again, you can download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hey y'all, my name is Christian. I'm a millennial, and this is the Millennial Mind. Millennials get a bad rap for being lazy, non-productive members of society. They are also told that their opinions are warped and that they don't matter. This podcast is designed to express an opinion, but from a millennial's perspective. We will talk about everything from love and relationships to pop culture to pretty much everything that comes to mind. Come join me on this journey of speaking my mind, and I hope that all of you are speaking your mind as well. Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of The Millennial Mind. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey of speaking my mind, and I hope that all of you are speaking your minds as well. Okay. As you can see from the title of this episode, you may have an inkling of what I'm going to discuss today. But if you don't know, I'm about to tell you. What we're going to talk about today is the Kirk Franklin situation. Now, let me give a little bit of background before we get right into it, okay? So Kirk Franklin, he is a Grammy Award-winning songwriter, producer, etc. He is very well known in the gospel world, and he's also credited for bringing gospel music mainstream. So, for all of my listeners who are overseas, he is actually an American gospel artist. Okay. So he if you guys know, or if you guys listen to the episode I did in season 1 about growing up churchy, you all would know that Kirk Franklin was one of the only artists I could listen to. And I felt like Kirk Franklin made music so cool that it didn't really seem like I was only listening to gospel music. It seemed like I was listening to songs that could also be played in the club. So I liked it. And I think my parents knew that. So they were like, okay, let us get you some Kirk Franklin so you don't feel like you're, you won't feel too left out. But Kirk Franklin was one of the only people that I could listen to. He's been creating music for probably as long as I've been alive. It's been either 30 years or over 30 years that he's been making gospel music, and he's remained relevant across all of those years, which is not really heard of for not only artists but gospel artists, because it's kind of hard to remain known for that length of time and then to remain relevant. So the fact that he was able to do that is a high achievement for him. And to this day, I still love me some Kirk Franklin. Okay. So that's a little background on him. But What happened that caused him to be all over Bob Saget's internet was about a video that came out that showed a conversation between him and his son. So he has a son named Carrion. That's his firstborn son. He is 33 years old. Um, we never really heard about this son. I don't know why. And after listening to this video, it kind of makes sense why we have it. Now, you guys may hear my cat in the background because he is sleeping with me and he is coming up beside me. So you guys may hear a meow or two, but it's going to be all right. Anyway, Kirk Franklin, he has a son named Carrion, firstborn son who is 33 years old. He's a grown man. From the information that I've read on him, the relationship seems to be strained between the both of them. Okay. So recently, there was a conversation between Carrion and Kirk Franklin that Carrion recorded. And basically, the conversation between him and Kirk wasn't that great. Kirk basically cussed him out. He cussed him clean out. And when I say them cusses were pristine and clear, that was a pristine, clear cuss out. Okay. I understood every word. I understood, everything. It was just, it just seemed like he practiced a lot. He practiced a lot on that one, but um nevertheless it was still disturbing to hear. So Carrion, he recorded this conversation and then he posted it on Instagram, and I believe it may have been even Facebook and Twitter. But basically, he says, "This is why I'm done. No father should speak to their children like this. If I have any issues, it's because of this type of treatment that I deal with behind closed doors. Hanging up in my face, no apology, no compassion, no effort. Stop telling me to go home to my family. I don't even know where they live. I don't think I'll ever trust my father to be alone around him ever again. I didn't want to do this. I probably won't release the entire recording because it's too embarrassing that I'm even dealing with this. No matter what people think, I pray my dad deals with his deep hatred toward me. I don't feel safe around him at all. This recording is recent. It is not from 2018, just to clarify. I'm going to learn from these experiences, live my life in peace, and make beautiful art." And then he put a praying hands emoji. So posted this video as well as that caption. And in the video, if you haven't listened to it, just look it up on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. It is there. But basically, Kirk was saying that he was going to put a foot in his son's A word, and I don't cuss, so that's why I'm doing the clean version. And Kirk said he will also break Carrion's neck. After that, the call ended abruptly. Okay. So when this came out, of course, people were in the frenzy. They're thinking, oh, gospel artist who says that he's a Christian and says that he's a believer in God is cussing. Like, why is that? So a lot of people were in the frenzy. Some were against Kirk Franklin and said that he shouldn't have been cussing out his son, and why is he cussing in the first place? Some were supportive of Kirk and said, hey, you have people that take you there, okay? We don't judge you for any of this because we probably said it a time or two ourselves, okay? And some found it funny. Some people did remixes. They added this video to his song Revolution as like a remix. You know what? In all honesty, that remix slapped. Okay? It was actually very entertaining. Hard to say, but it was. But anyway, some people made fun of the whole ordeal. So after this recording came out and it started to get some traction, KIRK issued an apology on Instagram and basically said that he said some things that he knows wasn't right. Him and his son have a very strained relationship, and that he was asking for prayer that the relationship can be repaired. Now, you probably want to know, like, hey, Christian, what are your thoughts on this whole thing? First, I think that context is very important. Okay. So that clip of their conversation, it seemed to be a small clip. It didn't seem to be the whole conversation. So that's a question. Is that the full conversation, or is that just a portion of the conversation? Another question I had, since um, KIRK was cussing, it sounded like this was something um, that has happened before. This doesn't sound like the first time KIRK has cussed out his son. Okay. So, and I could be wrong, but to me that sounded like a professional cusser. Okay. he didn't sound like a beginner. So the question is, has KIRK always cussed out his son, or was this a moment of anger and frustration? Now, I can understand if it was a moment of anger and frustration, because there are times where people will take you to complete darkness, okay? And you black out and you say some stuff that you don't mean to say. I get that. I get that. Sometimes we have these moments, and whether you're a Christian or not, it just happens to, it can happen to anyone. And, you know, it just happens. But if you're like always cussing out your children, that kind of raises a red flag for me. That's a problem that certainly needs to be addressed. Another question that I had is, it seemed like, and I could be wrong, and it's just hard to tell without the full video that he will not post. But basically, did when Kerrion called his father, or when KIRK called his son, whatever, did KIRK just automatically just start cussing his son out? I don't think he did. I think what happened is that he was provoked to that point and he just completely blacked out. I don't think that KIRK called his son, or Kerrion called his father, and KIRK just automatically just started cursing. I think it took a little bit of momentum to get to that point where he cussed out his son completely. So, with that being said, since we don't have the full context of this whole conversation, it's kind of hard to really make an opinion or really form an opinion when I don't have all of the facts. But based on the clip that we do have and the facts that we do know, a couple of things are for sure. One, KIRK should not have cussed out his son. Now, I know some people are really on that train, saying, like, anytime, that really that there shouldn't be anybody that's cussing out their children, which is true. That is true. But we shouldn't be cussing out nobody. Absolutely nobody. Not your kids, not your parents, not your friends, not your neighbors, not your dog, not your cat, not your fish. Nobody. Like, what's the purpose? Like, are there no other words that can be used? Do you not have a plethora of other words that you learned in school that you could use that is not profane? Like, and this is just my opinion. I feel like I have a bunch of other words to use that are not profane that will still make my point firm and strong. I don't need to use cuss words in order to get my point across. So yes, KIRK should not have cussed out his son, but we shouldn't be cussing out anybody. Okay. And with that point, like KIRK made it clear in his apology video that he knows it was wrong. So he's aware that it's wrong. So we don't need to beat the dead horse saying like, oh, he shouldn't have cussed out his son. He knows that. He said that in his video. So let's move on. That's my thing. So no, we shouldn't be cussing out our children. We shouldn't be cussing out anybody. Okay? Nobody, no thing. Another thing that is true is that his son should not have leaked the recording. He's shady for that. Okay. So the fact that he said, like, oh, I'm not trying to our business out there. Yes, you are. Because if you weren't, you wouldn't have put the doggone video on Bob Saget's internet. Like, you shady. You knew that you were so angry at your father, you wanted to ruin his reputation because he is a well-known public figure. So what better way to hurt your father than to, and especially a father who claims that he's a Christian, than by putting out a video where he's cussing you out. Just a perfect ploy to get against your father. So he's shady. He's shady in my book. And then he didn't even release the full recording. So we don't even know if there's something that he did that provoked his father to anger, or if he said something or whatever. We just don't know any of it. So I feel like he will always be shady in my book because he didn't tell the entire truth. But wait, this story gets even more juicy. So one of his siblings, which is another one of Kirk Franklin's children, his baby girl Kennedy, put out I don't know if it was a comment or if it was a post or whatever, but she basically was saying, dude, you wrong. You had the same opportunities as we did. You keep saying that our dad is trash. No, you're the one that's trash. You were given the same opportunities and you just refused to take on those opportunities. Or if you did take on the opportunities, you messed them up. I was like, whoo, this drama is just coming out. But even still, it's just sad to watch because you never want your family drama that is supposed to be personal to come out on the internet for everyone to see and for everyone to give an opinion on. Poor KIRK, it got so bad where he felt like he needed to do an apology. When did a personal issue become the property of the public? Now, I do understand that Kirk Franklin's a public figure and he's a celebrity and he has different rules to follow. However, he is human. He has feelings. He goes through things just like we do. We are not a part of his family. So why are we giving opinions on something that we're not a part of? It doesn't make sense. Just because he's a public figure doesn't mean that everything that he owns and everything that he is as a person is ours. That makes no sense because we didn't pay for any of it. We didn't, we didn't give any of this stuff to him other than popularity. It's like, why is his family now our property that we can critique and fine line and do whatever we want to do with it? That doesn't make any sense, and that's something that I've never agreed with. But that's neither here nor there. Despite everything that has gone on with KIRK and his family, and it seems like this has gone on for years with his son, there are still things that we can learn from this situation that we can apply to our own lives. I always try to find the silver lining in everything. I feel like there's always room for growth, and I feel like there's always something that we can learn from every situation that we go through or every situation that we see. So I came up with 4 things pretty much. The first lesson that I feel like we can learn is that people who are Christians, they make mistakes too. Do not judge. When people put themselves out there that they are a Christian, there is the automatic notion that people come up with, and they think that Christians are perfect. They do no wrong. They don't make any mistakes. Then when they do make mistakes, they are very quick to crucify and throw them under the bus. You know, the Bible even says, do not judge. I feel like if I point my finger, and this is just me, Christian, if I point my finger at somebody, there's 4 other fingers pointing back at me. Okay. And plus, I don't have time to be focusing on what everybody else is doing because I have enough problems on my own. I have some business. Okay. I'm drinking so much water. I'm trying to drink like, half of my body weight in water. I'm using the bathroom so much. That's what I'm focused on, is trying not to use the bathroom so much. Like, I got other things to focus on compared to like other people's stuff. Like, I have business to think about. So I don't have time to judge. I don't know where these internet trolls find the time and the energy to form an opinion on somebody else's life. Like, get you some business. like, do you have any hobbies? Do you like to read? Catch up on the Netflix show. Do something. But it just kind of bothers me how people are very quick to judge somebody else's situation that they only got a 15-second clip, to really show for it. It doesn't make sense. So we shouldn't judge. We shouldn't judge anybody if they're a Christian, if they're not a Christian. Like, we need to focus on our own business and our own lives. The second lesson that I've learned is that we need to refocus our mind and our thoughts on what's really important. For this whole situation, people were so focused on Kirk Franklin cussing out his son that they didn't really pay attention to the strained and toxic relationship between a father and a son. And that's what's very hurtful. If you listen to Kirk Franklin's apology video, he basically said that he's gone through years and years of therapy with his son to try to repair this relationship, and it has not worked. So this is like a toxic relationship that is going on, and it is straining a relationship between a father and a son. It is straining a family structure. That's sad to see. I would never want to see somebody's family being broken up or strained relationships in families, because family is important. At least to me, family is very important. I mean, if you don't have anybody else, you have your family. And I just never want to see a family structure go down if it don't have to. But with that being said, both, like, all family members involved have to be willing to work on it. At this point, we don't know who the issue is. We don't know who the toxic person is. We don't know if that's Kirk or if that's Carry-On. But whoever it is, there has to be a willingness to change that toxic behavior. And if it's not, then things are just going to keep crumbling and crumbling and crumbling. So that should have been the main focus. We should say, oh, Kirk, I'm sorry to see that you're going through this. Oh, Carry-On, I'm sorry to see that you're going through this. We're going to pray for the both of you that your relationship and the relationship with the rest of your family members is restored. That's what needs to happen, not the focus on the cussing. Okay? That should not have been the main focus. Okay? Now we know that Kirk Franklin is a veteran cusser. Big freaking do. What about the relationship with his son, with his grown son, by the way, that is in need of a great repair? Let's focus on that. Let's focus on the family structure. Okay? Refocus our priorities on what's important. Okay? Number 3. Another lesson we can learn is that we all have family woes. I don't know anyone who does not have issues in their family. Okay? We all have issues. Kirk Franklin, because he's a public figure, his was just aired out on Bob Saget's internet, unfortunately. But we all have family woes. We all have that one person in our family that's crazy. All of us. I can name a few in my family that are crazy. So we all have family members who are crazy that will put you on the edge of a cliff. Okay, we all have that. So that's even more of a reason not to judge someone else, because maybe you don't have a father that's cussing you out, but maybe you have a mother that's on drugs. Maybe you have a sibling who decided to estrange themselves from everyone else for no reason. There's a whole bunch of family issues that each person in this world has. So we have no room to judge anyone for what they're going through in their family. And then the last lesson that I feel like we can learn from this situation is that we shouldn't let anyone have that much power over us that they take us into a place of darkness. Kirk Franklin, I believe, with this situation, and I could be wrong, but in this particular instance, it seemed like he let his son take him there. He let his son take him to a place of darkness where he blacked out. He had a blackout moment where he cussed him clean out. To me, that almost seems like his son has a lot of power over him in order for him to react in that manner. I never want to have anyone to have that much power over me where I react uncontrollably. Now, I'm not saying that I completely have this together, because there's a family member right now that if they could take me there, okay? So this is a constant daily work that you have to do. But I've made up in my mind that I don't want to let anyone or anything take me to that place where I'm not myself, where I react uncontrollably, where I do things that I may regret. I just don't want that testimony. And you want to make sure that you have the power over how you react, how you say things, how you do things. And if someone has that power over you, it's horrible. It's like you're a puppet, and you definitely don't want to be a puppet in this life, or any life for that matter. So no, and you know what person and what thing can, push your buttons where you go far left, okay? But we have to learn how to not let outside forces affect affect our inside reactions. That's something that we can't do, because they're third party forces for a reason. They're third party. They're outside forces. We have to learn how to control ourselves and to take dominion and power over ourselves, because we're the only ones that should have that power, not anyone else. And if someone else has that power, what life are you living? You're living as a puppet, and that's not the testimony that I know all of us want to have. Okay, y'all, that's all that I have for you today. What did you think about this Kirk Franklin situation? Let me know in the comments, or send me an email at mindofmillennials@gmail.com. Make sure to like our Facebook page, The Millennial Mind, and our Instagram page, _Millennial Mind. Also, if you would like to support this podcast, the link will be in the show notes. You can go to that link in order to support this podcast. If you love this podcast and want to see it progress and want to see it to keep going, you can also support this podcast if you so desire. There is no pressure to do so. Also, make sure to like and subscribe to this podcast. Leave a comment so that it can become more noticeable to other listeners. And of course, I have a quote for you guys. This actually comes from Kirk Franklin himself. And it says, God may allow us at times to hit rock bottom to show us he is the rock at the bottom. Whew. I hope KIRK reads that quote that he said, and hopefully that gives him some peace and some insight on this current situation that he's going through. So KIRK, if you're listening, we're praying for you. And we're praying for the relationship between you and your son that is restored. And we're praying that you come out of this situation better than when you came in. Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you all, each and every one of you. And until next week, I will talk to you guys soon.